everybody. Are you excited to be here? Let me hear a sound. Thank you. And thanks for that introduction, guys. I am very excited to be here today at Eureka Encounter 2021. Truth of the matter is that I have been looking forward to this day exceedingly. And I am excited to be here. I love stories, and I'd like to call myself as a storyteller. Because in addition to my day job of leading teams to maintain complex mining equipment, I also write and tell stories. All right, so today what I'm going to do basically is to tell you 3 stories about my life. That's it, just 3. It is my hope that these stories would inspire you to aspire to heights that you never thought you could. My hope is that these stories would inspire you to believe in your own dreams and capabilities, to go out there and chase them. And of course, these stories should inspire you to live out loud. The first story I want to share with you is about dreams and mindset. Now, the ING in front of my name is an indication that I have been inducted into the Ghana Institution of Engineering as a professional engineer. And if it was in law, I would have been said to have been called to the bar. But the question you are probably asking yourself is, there are so many professional engineers in Ghana, right? So what makes my story even more inspiring? What makes my story different is the journey on which I have traveled. How long it took for me to get to where I have gotten to today. What makes my story different and should inspire you is an impossible dream which became a reality. These are what makes my stories different, and I'll give you a few examples. I was born in a very little village in the central region of Ghana called Kwamuano. Now, Kwamuano is about 50 kilometers to the north of Cape Coast on the Kifuprasu Road. If you have ever been to Kakum National Park, you have used that road before. The room in which I was born, in the same room which I lived with my parents and siblings, was made of mud, and it was roofed with the leaves of raffia. In Kwamuano, we did not have any electricity, and so all the period I lived in Kwamuano until I was about 16 or 17, I had never slept in electricity. If you wanted to have illumination at light, then you would have to make do with a kerosene-powered lantern, otherwise you sleep in darkness. Those of us who were fortunate enough to want to iron our shirts before we went to school had to make do with a charcoal-powered box iron because obviously there was no electricity. The whole village had to make do with one latrine, the one we call Atonkom, if you have ever been to a rural area before. This is the story of the place I was born. When I was about 6, my father took me to school. But unlike my kids and most of you, I started from class 1. So I didn't do nursery, I didn't do KG, I didn't do all the beautiful things you guys do. That is the reason I cannot say a poem. The school I went to and the buildings thereof are not different from the house we lived in Kwamuano. Our schools were made of mud, the floors were dusty. There was nothing like cement, talk of tiles even. We had very less teachers in my village school, but of all the less teachers we had more people teachers than trained teachers. And I can remember so well that when I was in class 5, my class and class 6 had to be put together under one teacher for the whole year because there were not enough teachers to take care of the 2 classes. There was a subject called vocational skills, which was meant to bring out the creativity in each student. Use your hand and brains to do something. That's what we did in our days. But because we did not have teachers and logistics for this to be taught, anytime there was a need for a test or an exam for vocational skills, we were asked to bring brooms. And so obviously the person who brought the bigger broom earn the bigger marks for vocational skills. This is the story of my life, and I went through that school for 9 years, and by the grace of God, by the time I completed in 1996, I made the best grades that my school had ever recorded since the inception of BECE in that school. Thank you. Now, my love for engineering and machines started way before I went to school, and that means I started way before I was 6. My father was a Nigerian hustler, and so he returned home in the early 80s with a dormer machine. And every time I would see him strip this machine apart and repair it. And so even before I went to school at 6, I knew about carburetors, I knew about gudgeon pins, I knew about connecting rods and all of those. I knew about all of this before I knew about A, B, C, and D. So it is this love for engineering which made me at that very early age have the thought that I would grow up to become an engineer. But I would become an engineer not like the one who is like my father, who could only strip equipment apart and repair them, but the one who also knows the science behind how things were done and how things worked. And so this love ended me in a school called the Cape Coast Technical Institute. Now, the grades I got from that village was enough to have earned me admission into any of the best secondary schools in Cape Coast. But my father had been advised that if I had to become an engineer, then I had to go to a technical school and learn how to do things with my hands. I would later find out that that statement was not entirely true. But do I ever regret going to a technical school? No, I do not regret it. And so to Cape Tech I went. And it wasn't all rosy in Cape Tech. That school had somehow been tagged as a school for the not so smart. And for some unknown reasons, this had been bought into by the students themselves. And so this reflected in how they approached academic works and how they did their things. But I was there for a reason. I was in Cape Tech to fulfill a mission. I was in Cape Tech to fulfill a childhood mission of becoming an engineer. And no tag of not being too smart was enough to weigh my dreams down. I went through Cape Tech for 3 years and completed, and by the grace of God, the very few people in my class who passed, I was one of them. Thank you. Now, when I completed Cape Tech, I thought I had become an engineer. So I asked, am I an engineer yet? And I was told, no, not too fast. And so I had to do further studies. I went on to do what we call Technician Part 1 and 2. That took me 2 years. I completed that and I was still not an engineer. How sad. I got an admission into the Cape Coast Polytechnic to read HND in mechanical engineering, hoping that was going to make me the engineer I wanted to be. Getting money to pay the 850,000 then, which is 85 cedis now, admission fee, was one of the toughest times that I have ever found in my life. A cousin of mine, Monica, decided and agreed to pay half of my fee. But my mother and I had to comb through every single house in our village, knocking on doors to be able to raise the remaining money to pay my fees. By the grace of God, we got the fees paid. For the whole first year in C Poly, I slept on the floor in my cousin's house because I did not have enough money to go pay for a hostel. But all glory to God, after 3 years I completed not only with a second class higher degree or diploma in mechanical engineering, but also with an amazing friend who would later end up becoming my wife. Now, that diploma from C Poly and everything I had done prior to that was still not enough to help me pass the engineering council exams, which means I had to do further studies. So after working for some time, I was admitted to the KNUST to do a 3-year degree top-up. I got the degree, I sat the engineering council examination and passed, and in 2016 November, by the grace of God, I was inducted into the Ghana Institution of Engineers as a professional engineer. Now, for every person or most people, it takes 4 years of post-secondary education to get a degree. But as you have realized, I did it for 8 years. That was enough to get me to throw my hands in despair and say, I have had enough. I will go on with my life wherever it ends me. But I had a dream that was very strong. And no matter how long it took me, I was prepared to stick by the time and achieve my dream. Dreams do come true, friends. Yes, they do. But dreams do not come true when you wish them. They come true when you work them into fruition. And so you can't live your life wishy-washy and think that whatever you wish for yourself is going to come true because you wish you become somebody in future. It does not just happen. The worst thing you can do for yourself as a person is to walk in this life without a dream. Your life becomes aimless, your efforts become shattered. You claw on to everything that comes your way, and in the end, you become frustrated. Everybody prospering become a bad person to you because you didn't get to go to the level where they have gotten to. Please set for yourself dreams. Dreams bigger enough to keep you awake at night, because if it doesn't keep you awake at night, it's not big enough. Set yourself dreams that are crazy. Dreams that people would look at you and say, and trust me, it is people who think they are crazy and have done things that nobody is doing. They are the ones who's changed the world. The next story I want to tell you about is about persevering until you have won. Now, when I was in Cape Tech, I had a lot of friends from the mining towns of Takwa and Bogoso and Christia and Obuasi and all those places. And anytime we sat for conversations, they would always say the nice things about working for a mine. You get free medical health for yourself and family, you get free accommodation, you get free meals, you get da. And as you know, if you sit in a conversation for a long time, it begins to change and shape how you think. And so the longer period I stayed with these guys and had these conversations about mining began to form an idea in my head. And I decided that mining it is, and I'm not going to change it. And so in 1998, when I was still in the second year in Cape Tech, one of my friends said to me that his mother will be able to help me secure internship in the mining company in Bogoso at the time. Now, I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And so I set off from Cape Coast to Bogoso. By the time I got to the Bogoso lorry station from Takwa, I was looking at a guy who had just come back from Europe. I was all white. You know why? Because the road from Takwa to Bogoso was in a deplorable state that by the time you get there, you have been shipped by dust and you have no option than to look like a white man. Now, I stood in the Bogoso lorry station, and the only thing I had in hand was the photo of this friend of mine. And this was the days when mobile phones were not for people like me, obviously. So I had traveled all the way with the photo of my friend. I showed this guy's photo to as many people as I could, and no one seemed to recognize him. And getting to the evening, some person said he knew his mom. And so thank God, this guy took me to my friend's mom's place. She spoke to someone she knew, he spoke to somebody, and they spoke to other people. Long story short, I did not get the internship, so I returned to Cape Coast, gave my friend's photo to him. By the faith of wanting to work in a mine, I kept that within me and I didn't give that away. In 1999, I set out to try again. I traveled all the way to a village called Wasa-Chempim near Ateku in the western region. There was a mining company there called Wexford Goldfields, and I wanted to go get internship from that company as well. As soon as I got to the gate, the security man looked at me and said, please leave your letter here. The authorities will read it and they will get back to you. If they are going to get back to me tomorrow, then I'm still waiting, because nobody ever got back to me. I came back to school, and in December of that year, my friend Richard and I set out to try again. We went again to Achempim, where I had been a few months earlier. And as they did before, they did not allow us entry into the mine. We went to Ayamfore, where Precious Mining Company is today. And again, they said, leave your letters, we will get back to you. Nobody did. We got to Bogoso, they said, leave your letters, we'll get back to you. Nobody did. We came back home after 3 or so days away, but we didn't win. I still held on to this dream of wanting to work in a mine. And trust me, nothing was going to let me stop persevering, because the only thing I knew was to win, and I was not going to fall short of that. Now, in the year 2000, when I was in my village, waiting for my results and looking at what will happen to me next, a small mining company started around where my village was, a village called Chifumampong. And I remember so well that Monday morning, I walked several kilometers to go look for internship again. But the same story as I had been told the previous times. I got there, took my letters, and nobody got back to me. I decided to try a different approach. And so I said, if the good mining companies are not allowing me in, then I am going to try Galamsey. Who knows? All of them are mining, right? So I traveled to a village called Wasa Wudua, which is in the forest, far beyond Takwa, if you know what I'm talking about, to go do Galamsey. Now, the night that I got to Awudua, it rained so heavily that all the rivers in Awudua were flooded, and it was not easy or possible for anyone to do alluvial mining in that river. And so I had to come back without tasting Galamsey. The following year I went again and nothing happened because it rained. 2 times I tried Galamsey and I did not succeed. I let myself be for a time, for a few moments. But what I was doing was looking at how I could pick the lessons that I had picked from the failures I have had in the past and use that to make life better for myself to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And so 2005 came when we were in the Polytechnic. And I walked to this guy who was the secretary for the Engineering Student Association and said to him, Samuel, we need to arrange for an industrial trip for our engineering student to go visit a company because it's part of what we have to do. For that reason, please write me a letter and I'm going to go on the road to look for internship for our people. Samuel wrote me the letter thinking I was going to fight the cause of the student, but I had my own plan. So I took the letter and went back to Achempim again. The same place I had been 3 times before did not allow me to go into the mine. I got to the security gate and as always, the guy started going on, please leave your letters and all of that. But just before he started, I said to myself in my head, you have no idea what I have up my sleeve today. I have gone to think of what I need to do. And I know by the grace of God, if I go past you today and get into the mine, something is going to happen. So he finished his going on and I told him, but sir, I have been sent by the authorities of the Polytechnic to come see somebody in HR and speak to him about students wanting to do industrial visit, which means I need to speak to a person so I can provide feedback to the people who sent me. If you take this letter and I go back, I haven't done my job, so would you please get me in to speak to someone? The man looked at me for some time, up and down, and picked the phone and called somebody in HR. Thank God whoever was there said they should allow me in. Now the same security people who have denounced me from entering the mine 3 times before now provided me an escort to walk to the Human Resource Office. I got to the HR office and I met a lady called Dorcas. The purpose for which I went, ostensibly, was spoken about for a minute. Then I told Dorcas my real story, how I had struggled and how I wanted to work in a mine. She looked at me, laughed and said, young man, I do not know you, but for this courage that you have exhibited, I am going to tell my boss that you are my cousin and we will try and put you on the national service list for those who will do their national service here. Thank you. This was in March, and in December of 2005, I went to Achempim to start my national service with Wexford Goldfields, now Golden Star Resources. By the grace of God, it's been 15 and more years in this industry. And I have worked with 5 companies in the mining industry, including the 3rd largest gold producing company in the whole world. Now, this wouldn't have been possible if I sat down and blamed the security men for not allowing me into the mine. Imagine how my life would have been now, having traveled a few countries around the world because of what I do. If I sat down and blamed it over an auntie, a difficult uncle, and in fact blamed it over my parent for not providing me with what it takes to work in a mine. I took my whole life into my own hands, and I knew it was my life, and so I fought until I won. Most people try once, and when they fail, they stop. Others try, and when they fail, they blame it on everybody, on the government, on the wicked auntie, on the difficult uncle, on the system. They blame it on everyone else except themselves. Life is about what you do, not what other people do for you. And so please know that anytime you fail, if you pick the lessons from your failure and learn from it, you have gotten a step closer to your dream. Pursue your dream and persevere until you have won. The next story I want to tell you about, which is the final story, is about getting ready for your big call. When I was a little child in my village, and even when I came to Cape Coast, I used to tell my friends that one day I would travel abroad. But the very first time I travel abroad, I would literally be searched. People would come looking for me. Where is that guy? It's his time to travel. I don't know where I got that inspiration from, but I held on so strongly to it. Now, there was nobody in my mother's family who had traveled abroad that I knew of. And the story wasn't different from my father's family either. So obviously, whoever was going to come look for me to go sit in the plane was not going to come from my family. But I held on to this faith. Now, when we had our first student loan, the very first thing I did was to obtain a Ghanaian passport. I had no use for it, but because of this strong dream, I had to get prepared for that. Many years after that, I was working in the Adjei-Laryea for a mining company, and I had come home to visit my family. I went back to work and I was going through my emails. Then an email popped up from a person I do not receive emails from frequently. And I still remember so well the contents of the email, and here it is. Dear Stephen, are you aware that you are traveling to Australia in September? If you are aware, then please do send me your passport and documents of some of the properties you own in Ghana so we can process your visa application. Now, I sat in my chair frozen, and for several minutes I thought I was having a nightmare. And so I kept blinking my ears for many hours or minutes, thinking that what I had read was a spam or something of that nature. But when I got blood flowing through my veins again, I picked the phone and called my wife. We arranged for the document that had been asked. We sent them to Accra, and truly, in September, I traveled Emirates to Australia for the first time in my life without chasing anybody for a visa. All of us, at one point or another, would come across opportunities. No matter where you are, no matter what you do, no matter which home you are from, it doesn't matter who your parents are. One day or another, an opportunity will come your way. But it is only those who are prepared and are ready for these opportunities. They are the ones who will make use of these opportunities. And so the big question that I'm asking you is, you are here wanting to have a better life. You dream of getting a good job. You dream of living in Trasaco or Cantonment. You dream in driving a big car. But ask yourself that, should that call come today? Are you ready? In bringing my message to a conclusion, the Apostle John, when he had aged and was writing his final letters to the church, he wrote his last epistle, which is the 3rd John, to a guy called Gaius, who was an elder of the church. And in verse 2, he said that, Beloved, above all things, It is my wish that you prosper and you be in good health. Right now, all of us are looking forward to a brighter 2021. And my wish for all of you is, above all things, my wish is that you prosper and you be of good health. Thank you very much, and God bless us all.